How's it going, everybody? This is the Uncanny Omar from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And today I have someone that I've been wanting to talk to for a long time. I've talked to in comments and on Twitter, but actually getting the chance to sit down and talk to this guy, I'm just glad that he decided to join me. So, everybody, this is Kenny Porter. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here. I'm
I'm,
glad
I'm
we have a
glad.
whole hour to talk and nerd out about stuff. I'm
Yes.
jazzed.
Oh man, I remember when you reached out to me a couple of years ago. It was I think it was your DC Mech that was coming out,
Yeah.
and I was like, because I do get emails from time to time from different creators, and I thought, oh, I actually had read something that you had written, and I'm like, oh yeah, man. You were like, now it's a single issue. I know you do collected editions, and I'm like, well, hell, send it to me anyway, man. I'll make it work. I'll make it work because sometimes I just want to read a comic, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. So, not only are you a comic creator, you're a writer, but also behind you, I see you're a you have some good taste back there. I see some collected editions going on back there.
I try. I have it. It wraps around like the whole
Oh
area around
yes.
here. Yeah, it
All
keeps going. It's all books all to the side. And then I just got, I'm sure you'll appreciate this. This just showed up in the mail like
Ultimate
5 minutes
Spider-Man
before I jumped.
4,
Yep.
yeah, man.
And I have all the I did all the symbiote variant covers for it. So I
Right.
just had to get that one. But yeah, I'm as big of a reader as I am a writer. I read a ton. I mean, that's why I said I'm a big fan of your channel, because I love just like how books are put together, or like what cool materials they put into them, like special editions of books. Like if I find a weird edition, like I found a weird edition of Batman Year One. Actually, I think I have it right here.
Is
I
it
found a
the
weird edition of Batman Year One in a used bookstore. That this has a different coloring job than the other ones. So it's this cover. It's back when it was just when it was Warner Books. I got to remember that the screen's mirrored. But the inside, I was sharing it with somebody. They were talking about this in the artist edition, that they did a different color job for every edition. So the colors are slightly different than all the other
Oh,
ones. Especially, they do some. I'm trying to look for the famous panel when Gordon's on the bed with his wife. They do these. Oh yeah, they do these like printed patterns in it and tones that I've never seen in any of the editions before. So I really love like weird editions of books and stuff. So that's why your channel has always been right up my alley, because I love that sort of stuff. So I have like 5 editions of Year One because I'll find a weird one I've never seen before and pick it up.
so people ask me, all the time, because what books do I double dip, triple dip? I think one of the jokes on the channel has become like the death and return of Superman. It's not even one of my favorite stories, but I have bought every freaking collected edition of that, and I will be getting the absolute edition. I'm just an idiot for these things sometimes, but the problem with that, and it's not really a problem, is I end up giving away like the previous editions. Like we have giveaways on our channel. We just had a really big one to celebrate 100,000 subscribers.
Hell yeah!
So I don't have the room to keep all of the editions. Right now, if it's X-Men, I make some kind of loophole. Like, okay, look, it's X-Men's. What if my Omnis fall apart? What if my Masterwork like starts losing the colors? I have this box set. I have it in Epic Collection. The only one I really got rid of was the Essentials. Do you remember the Essentials?
Oh yeah, I remember those.
Those were the only ones that I got rid of. And I had the first printing, which had like the ever popular Storm nipple shower scene. Because Dave Cockrum drew it in, and the colorist was supposed to cover it up, right? So I had that one, and even that hurt to get rid of. I'm like, but I don't like them in black and white. They weren't printed in black and white. But you can't keep them all. So
no.
But
if I end up double dipping and I get extras, I'll usually give them to my friends' kids. Like that are getting into them and stuff. I'll be like, well, here I've double and triple dipped on stuff. They can have this one. So I've given editions of Year One away to kids before.
Although it is hard to give a kid like a copy of Berserk. Here's my Tonkabon.
That's true. Yeah. Listen, I got all the hardcovers. So here's all in Tonkabon size ones. And your kid, how old's your kid? 10? They're probably fine.
They'll be fine.
Yeah.
I say that now. I got like a 15 and a 12-year-old. And what's interesting is, when I get asked that question, is this okay to read for a 13, 14-year-old? I never once think of myself at that age when I was reading. I always think of my kids. So I'm like, absolutely not, because I'm a parent, right? But if I if I didn't have kids, and I thought, would 13-year-old Omar would have, oh my god, 13-year-old Omar would have loved this. Yes, absolutely buy that book. But I try to be a little more responsible than just answering the way that I would have enjoyed something.
Yeah. And I
Uh,
don't have kids, so I don't think that way. So I'm just like, is your kid cool?
yeah,
Like, like,
absolutely, man. They want to be weird.
yeah.
Kenny, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, man? How you were a comic book fan, and then you got into the game of writing comics, and you've done a lot of prolific characters. Like you've had a run on Super. Well, actually, you know what? Why don't you tell me? Well, how
Okay.
did it start for you?
Let's go all the way back to the beginning.
All
So,
right.
I was a child of the '90s, so like that's when comics had that giant boom and everything. And I lived just like 2 blocks away from a comic book store, so any chance I had, I was throwing whatever change I could muster up to get stuff from the like quarter bins or dollar bins. Any reduced stuff. Like I read a ton of Untold Tales of Spider-Man because that was really cheap. Like they were like 99-cent issues, I
Yep,
think.
I love those.
So that
Yeah.
was like my first ongoing Spider-Man because I could get a lot of them. I was like, I'd get my bang for my buck there, and I'd buy whatever I could. I remember there was one time, I've always loved aliens, and I really wanted this alien comic. It was like a one shot from Dark Horse that was like $5, and I never bought a comic that was that much before. So I kept running home to find more change and running back to throw it on the counter. Like, is this enough? Is this enough? To the point where the woman was like, "You can just have it if you want it that badly. Like you've come back like 5 times. Like you could just take it."
Oh, I love people like that, because that's the way I am. When I used to, I would set up at like flea markets,
Mhm.
because that was one of my favorite shops, was at a flea market. This guy named Dr. Comics, like,
Oh, awesome.
oh, I love that dude, man. He probably was selling me stuff that you shouldn't been selling a kid, but he didn't. I mean, he was making money, right? And he was at a flea market, bro. And it's in Kentucky, where we also sell like guns and diapers and
Yeah.
props. So, um, but I have good memories of going to places like that and just picking up comics. And I'm glad that she gave it to you. So what ended up happening after that? You got your Alien comic.
Yeah, I got that, read that, and absolutely loved it. Just like I love all the alien stuff. And
Mhm.
I kept reading comics for a long time until, like at one point, kind of like money got tight, and then we kind of like I didn't go as much and as often. And then when I was younger, I also lost my whole collection to, like flooding incident in a storage area. So like I
Uh-huh.
just lost them all. So at that point, I didn't collect for a while. And then I would dip in high school, middle school. I'd go and buy just random issues when I could, like issues of Green Lantern and stuff. And that's when Judd Winnick was writing it. I would go pick up random issues when I could find them. The problem is the comic shop that I loved. A couple of other guys bought it, and they weren't interested in comics. They just wanted to sell trading cards at that point, so they wouldn't really order a lot of
Do you,
stuff.
do you remember what year this was when this was happening?
When I got the Green Lantern one, that would have been 2001 or 2002, because I think
So,
Judd
so,
Winnick was still on there.
so comic books had taken a dive, and at
Yeah,
this point in 2002, there was the manga boom, and then also comic people were taking an interest in comics again. Okay, I just wanted to
yeah.
kind of picture what era this was. Okay,
Oh, totally. And I could be wrong about the timing. I know exactly what issue of Green Lantern I bought. It's the one where Jade is on the cover and she fights Killer Frost. Because I remember picking it up and I was like, "Oh, who's this new Green Lantern I don't know about?" Because I didn't get to read any of like the JSA stuff as a kid. So I didn't know who Jade or Obsidian were or anything. So I was super jazzed to read it. So I would dip in when I could, and I'd always really been interested in writing and writing my own stories. I used to take white paper and like fold it over and staple it and make essentially like mini comics, like draw them and write them and stuff. I used to have a ton of fun doing that, and I used to draw all the time. Originally, I wanted to be a comic artist, and people would like gift me drawing pads and stuff all the time. So I've always loved art, and then I kind of realized like I was more interested in telling the story than I was in writing the story. So I leaned more into writing. I got really into script writing in high school, and I taught myself how to do it. Like I bought books about screenwriting and playwriting and stuff. I got really into that, and then ghost wrote some screenplays when I was really young, like right out of high school. But I didn't have a lawyer, so I got picked over. with context
Oh
stuff.
no!
Yeah. So
Like
whatever I wrote, I lost.
screenplays of like TV shows or movies.
Movies. So I had been hired by a company, and we didn't have a lawyer look at it, and it was essentially like I wrote a whole movie, and if it got sold, I would get like a couple grand, and that's it, because I was like an 18-year-old kid and I didn't know any better.
Wow, look at you writing for Hollywood though, man, at 18.
Yeah. So that was fun, real world experience. Then after a while, I'll just tell the real version of the story because it's funnier. The reason I got like super back into comics was because I injured my knee. It wasn't a sports injury, anything cool. I like dislocated my knee, or like popped it by dancing to Thriller in someone's basement, and my foot caught on their unfinished carpet, and I went one way and my knee went the other.
Okay.
So I was laid up for a while, and I got somebody to drive me to the bookstore, and I bought like a big stack of trades and everything, and like American comics and manga, and realized like how much I loved it, how much I wanted to get back to it, and decided like, first of all, I became a like full-fledged fan again. Like I said, that was the same time I was like, I got to go to a convention right now, which was also when all of the like Jeff Johns Green Lantern stuff was popping off with all the different color rings and stuff, and Green Lantern and Grant Morrison's Batman, which I believe were happening at the same time. I think those were the first two I started subscribing to again, and like started a pull list. So the Jeff Johns Green Lantern is like very close to me. Like I absolutely love it. He's another Michigan guy too.
It was a great run though. Like absolutely a great run.
Mm-hmm. And so from there I started going to shows, and then I realized like after reading another book that like really shook me about how much like sequential art could do as an art form, and realizing like I loved it since I was a kid and I loved writing, like I should try and write and make comics. So I wrote a crime one shot, just like a black and white 20-page story that I collaborated on with a Japanese artist named Ali K. Sasagawa. And I did like a 20-page like crime manga, so to speak, that I printed, got stapled up, sold at shows. It got like a little bit of digital distribution through a tiny little imprint back when everybody was trying to make their own like digital comic service when Comixology kicked off. And they had a lot of like, weren't going to be exclusive, just digital publishers and stuff. And everybody was trying that like around the same time, like Monkey Brain was kicking off and a bunch of those other digital exclusive ones. So after I did that, I was like, well, now I want to do more. And I started putting more books together. And then I won the first Top Cow talent hunt that they did for writing. So I got to write a Witchblade tie-in book. So that was my first like published work. Which was awesome. So like right out the gate, like got to write something for Top Cow and Image.
What did you, just out of curiosity for anybody that was ever interested? Because I've had Mark on the show before. Wait, Mark Silvestri, sorry, Mr. Silvestri on the show before. I'm not on first name basis with him. And I never bothered asking him because he's always talking about like his new projects and things like that. But I'm always curious what that entails. Like, do they give you like, send us 10 pages, like sample script? Like, what do they ask for?
From what I remember, because it was the first time they ran like the public, anyone could submit and we'll pick a winner. They wanted a full.
This, by the way, is huge. They didn't do things like this when I was a kid.
No, that's why I was like, I have to jump on this because this is a huge opportunity, because they
do it every year, by the way. Every year.
Yeah. So it was the first time, and nobody really I think the rules were a lot looser on the first one, where it was like you need to send an idea and then a full page treatment for a one shot. And you could send in, they had like 5 characters that you could do. They were all part of the Artifacts book, which was the one that Ron Mars was doing, which was like, which was the different, adjacent characters who had the other, powerful artifacts aside from the Witchblade. So I picked a character that I loved. I kind of retooled an idea I had for a Hellblazer book that I wanted to do, but like I was nobody. It was like I was going to go knock down Vertigo's door and do a Hellblazer book. So it's like, I have an idea for a creepy horror story. I wrote it out and sent it, and then I didn't hear anything. And I just assumed like I didn't win. And then I remember being out to dinner with some friends and my phone just exploding because it got announced on Twitter that I won the writing competition. So it was awesome. And I got to work with Matt Hawkins and a bunch of the folks over at Top Cow. And I got to tell a really good, like creepy one-shot story set in the Witchblade universe. It was really horror centric and really fun. And after that, I started going to more shows and like tabling with the two comics I had at that point, the crime one shot I did and the Top Cow one. And then I decided, actually back that up a second. I got great advice from Jason Aaron because I talked to him and
How did you
asked him.
end up talking to him?
He was at a convention in Cincinnati that I think they only did a few times that I believe, I want to say Tony Moore put on.
Oh,
I don't remember I think I could be wrong on that, but I remember going because I met a lot of friends that I have now at that show for the first time, like Ryan Stegman and stuff like that was the first time I hung out with him and some of those guys. So I'd gone up to Jason's table just to meet him. And I told him like, hey, this is where I'm in my career. I just did this. This is what I want to do. What would your advice be? And his advice was don't sit and wait for anyone to ask you to do anything. He's like, just keep making stuff and eventually people will take notice. So I took that to heart. He was like, basically like, I know it feels like you broke in, but he's like, don't expect anyone to ask you to do anything after this. Just assume that you still have to work just as hard and do stuff, which I think was great advice because I just didn't sit around waiting for anybody to give me work or anything. I put together the next thing I did was a graphic novel called Barnstormers, which was like a very cartoony, like 1920s book about pilots who hunt giant monsters. It's like King Kong meets the real Ghostbusters kind of. So I worked on that with an artist in Italy who usually draws Disney comics. So I had that kind of like animated flair.
And how are you finding these folks, by the way?
So back in the day, it was on DeviantArt. I would just go on, and you could find like people with really good. I haven't been on there in forever now. I don't even know if it's still around, but I used to just use DeviantArt and find people who had really good sequential art samples, like really good comics pages, and who were looking to collaborate on stuff.
How did you end up getting Barnstormers published then?
So
a publisher, or did you guys self-publish?
So it went through like we self-published originally. It had some stops and starts with places, but when it kept like getting picked up and then like pushed away because of some publishing initiative or because the editor left, I was like, I had a whole graphic novel done. Like we did the whole thing. And so we were like, F it, like we'll just put it on Kickstarter. So I did a Kickstarter for it. I was like, hey, this whole book is done. You're literally just paying for the printing cost and like anything else, like we'll go to the creators. And it got funded, I think within like 24 hours. And then I had a book agent. Yeah. Thank you, man. And then I had a literary agent email me while it was running. And he was like, hey, are you represented? I'd like to represent you. So that helped like grease the pipeline. I didn't believe him at first. I was like, oh, there's no way. Like that happened just because the Kickstarter went up. But he was a legitimate agent. And we went through and we tried to pitch around in places. Eventually it got picked up by Insight and I believe Simon and Schuster, and it got published about a year or two later after we retooled it a little bit. So I hit bookstores, and then at the same time then I sold. This is where things start like taking off. So I
love hearing
so to
this.
speak. So we sell that, and then on that I end up selling a graphic novel to Scholastic as well called Fearless. Which is an all ages book I did about a girl whose best friend moves away at the beginning of the summer. And they both love this Kamen Rider type TV show. So inspired by the hero from their TV show, she like gears up and rides 2 towns over to try to win her best friend back. And that sold. And then DC ended up contacting me because Riley Rossmo was going to be doing a short in a Halloween anthology. And he recommended me. So right off the bat,
How did you know Riley?
I knew him through the guys I started hanging out with in Cincinnati. So Riley's really close with Stegman. We all talk and stuff all the time, like every day.
Networking.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we hang out all the time and stuff, and we've been buddies forever. He's one of my best friends.
Oh,
They're
that's
all
wonderful,
like
man.
him, Stegman, Danny Warren Johnson, all those guys. Like we're real tight. Uh, Brian Level. There's a ton of like really talented people like that are my friends, and I'm like honored
Were you
to
all?
be called
I
their
mean,
friend.
you mentioned Cincinnati, and I mean, I know the area where you're from. Were you all from this like around the same area, or did they just happen to be at the show?
They just happened to be at the show, and they were already in like a group chat sort of situation on Skype, and then I was like auditioned, essentially like brought in to see if I could hang, and I evidently could hang. So I talk to them all the day, like every day. There's a bunch of people on it that are super talented. Every like the Schlub came together because we all are on that chat and talk and stuff all the time and like hang out. We get together, go to dinner and stuff all the time. We're all buddies.
Mhm.
But like I was saying, Riley was going to do the short. He recommended me. And so the DC editors reached out and they took a look at the work I'd done and they offered me a Green Lantern story for my first thing, which is awesome because that's like one of my favorite things in the world. So I was
Well, you were
over the
talking
moon.
about geeking out with Judd Winnick's run, and then eventually Jeff Johns' run. So
Yeah. So Green Lantern was a huge thing, even though it was only like 8 pages. I was like, if this is all I do, that's fine. Like then I'm all set. So Riley and I got to do that. I did a Guy Gardner story for a horror anthology. And from there, I had a real great time working with the editors there. All the editors at DC are awesome. I really enjoy working with all of them, and we built a great rapport. And they let me know they wanted me to work on more stuff, so they kept giving me more shorts and anthologies. And then eventually, I started doing one shots, and then that ended up leading to series, which led to like DC Mech and Superboy and stuff. We'll get into those later if you want to, but that's kind of where it happened. And then from there, I've been doing other projects with other publishers and stuff, things like the Schlub, so Saloon Creator owned.
So tell me about the Schlub. Somebody was asking, the Schlub. How much did you write? It shows him as a co-author, and I've always wondered how that works. And that was a good question because everybody works a little bit different. But how does it work for something like that? That you said it all started with a chat.
Yeah. So the Schlub's an interesting situation. I know all writers and like creators work differently, like with co-writing. So Stegman had the idea originally a while back, and he was going to do it himself. He was going to write it and draw it.
Okay.
And then he decided that he would rather co-write it. And since he and I talk all the time and we're friends, he was like, "Hey, I'd like to co-write it with you." And then our friend Tyrell, who we also talk to like every day, he wanted him to draw it because he thought his art style would be perfect for it, for the tone and for all of like the comedy moments, the like big emotional moments. So the way it worked out was Ryan had an original outline that we then kind of retooled because he hadn't touched it in a little while. And basically the writing process would go like this. We knew what the beginning and the ending were. So we always, and if we talk about the ending, spoiler alert for anybody, we'll try not to, but we knew at the beginning, we knew what the ending were. So then with each issue, we would get on the phone and we would talk out what would happen. Just like, okay, we know we want like these 5 things to happen. How do we get there? What would be really good emotional scenes? What would be really some funny like jokes with them with the whole body swapping thing? If you're not familiar with the Schlub, it's about a piece of shit dentist who switches bodies with like the world's most powerful heroes, like a Superman Thor type, and how that's bad for the rest of us. Like him getting a second chance is the worst thing that could ever happen to everyone on the planet. And from there, I would go and type up an outline of everything we talked about, essentially like take notes while we're talking. I'd retool it and start to break the scenes down a little bit more. And then he and I would go over them. We would always be like texting each other either in the morning or late at night, like, oh my God, I just thought of something funny that Roger could say, or he could do this.
Okay.
And then after we'd approve the story outline, I'd then break it into pages. We do the same thing, run through it, and check it over again. And then I would script it out, and do just the pages, not the dialogue at first, because we did it Marvel style with Tyrell. So we'd have like notes about what he was going to say.
By the way, I love when people say that, but in case people don't know what the Marvel style is, Kenny, what is the Marvel style?
Okay, so the Marvel style or Marvel method is where you don't break stuff down into panels like a full script and put the dialogue at first. It's just very brief descriptions of what's happening, different levels of detail depending on who you are, and you let the artist break down the pages and decide the panels and everything. So Tyrell loves working that way, so it was really fun to do that. So we would come up with all the visuals and lay them out. We'd have indicators. If there was a line we really knew was going to be in there, we'd put it in there, but we'd have indicators of like, this is going to be a heavy dialogue page, or he's going to say something like this or something like this, so that he knew to leave room for word balloons when he needed to. But that way it was like ultra collaborative, because at that point, Tyrell would be like, hey, what if on this page, instead of this happens? So really Tyrell would help with like a third writing stage afterwards. Before he would start like doing layouts. And then the writing process really went into the art because of that too, of like, we would all talk through the thumbnails. And then I would dialogue off of the thumbnails because his were so detailed, like I didn't need to wait for pencils. So I dialogue off of that. And that's kind of what none of my writing experience has ever been like that before, like where we were just like completely involved the whole way right up until the line art. So that's kind of how we wrote it. So like, I guess I did most of the typing, which Ryan will completely attest to. But yeah, I did a lot of that stuff, and I did the first dialogue pass, then Ryan would go over it. But we were both heavily involved the whole time. So I know that's a super long answer, but that was the very interesting way that we put the book together.
That is the way you did it, though, and that's great. And when you're working on a project like that, it's got to be fun, like, working with your friends, right? With people that you're used to talking all the time. Is there ever any time that you all disagree on something? Like, what happens then? Who gets to win as the writers, right? Like, how does that even come about? Like, what do you guys do when you don't see eye to eye?
Yeah, there were times when we disagreed on stuff, but we just talked it out. Like, I think it should be this, or I think it should be that. But there was never a time when we like completely disagreed. Usually one of us could talk the other one into it, like why it was a good idea. I guess I would have said that if it was like if there had been a butting heads moment, I've been like, this was Ryan's original idea, let's try to stick to what he wanted. But we never really had that sort of thing. Like, anytime somebody had an idea, it was always for the better. Whether it was me or Ryan or Tyrell, like adding stuff. There's a lot of great moments in the Schlub where Tyrell just added like some really good quiet moments. Like there's a scene where Roger in this superhero's body like wrecks a date his ex-wife is on. And there's just a lot of silent panels of him, like the realization of how embarrassed he's made himself and her, like in public, that we were like, we're not putting any dialogue over that. Like, just leave it. So it was really, we didn't really clash heads over that at all. So I would have said if there had been an executive decision, like turn the keys on the submarine thing, I probably would have let Ryan decide since it was his original concept. But it was always really super collaborative.
Okay. I love when like-minded people get to work together on something and they make something special. Would you do it again?
Oh, totally. Yeah. We've talked about, like, we know what would happen in volume 2 of the Schlub. So, or I'd work that way again too. I've done a couple of shorts with Riley, and Riley works that way too, and likes to, Riley Rossmo. So I've actually done a couple of Green Lantern stories with him. And we worked that way, and it was really great to just see him kind of go wild.
So I need to know, how did DC Mech come about? Because I know that. Hold on, let me make sure it is what I'm looking at.
Okay.
That is a mech behind you, right? I can't tell. It's a little dark back there.
Oh, right. Hang on. Wrong hand. Right there.
Right there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my that's one of the Gundam models. I'm a huge Gundam fanatic, and I build like the model kits and stuff. I don't have as many of them out right now.
The Gunpla. Okay.
Yep.
Sounds my brother. So my question is, how did you pitch that to DC, or did DC go, dude, we want to make some giant robots? Like,
kind of a mix of both. Okay. So my editor, Dave Wielgus, who's awesome, and I've worked on a ton of projects with, came to me and he was like, I got something for you because I know you're like the giant robot guy. Like, he was like, we want to do something. We have a title, DC Mech. What would you do with that? And I was like, and he was like, you can think about it for a couple of weeks
So
and just
just the
get me.
title, just that's
Yeah,
it.
they
Just
had the title, and then they said like the one image. He was like, try to think of like what it would be like if Superman arrived in a mech suit instead of a rocket ship. And I was like, say no more. And he told me like you can have a couple of weeks to just like come up with kind of a page. And he told me that on Tuesday. By Friday, I had an entire alternate history of the DC universe written and the story outlined like 4 or 5 pages. That I sent him on Friday. I was like, I know you said you didn't need it until 2 weeks. I was like, but I'm ready to talk tonight if you're ready to talk. And he read through it and he loved it because I've always loved the Elseworlds books and they hadn't been doing stuff like that for a while. So the fact that they were like essentially asking me to do an Elseworlds Justice League story, I was over the
correction, and Elseworld Justice League stories that feature giant freaking robots. So that's a win-win, man. Dude, I love that book. That was so fun.
Dude, thank you so much, man. It was really a labor of love because like I said, I'm a huge mech fan, and so
the different mechs that you borrowed from, or maybe the artist did. I don't know whose idea it was. Like,
oh yeah, okay. So that was always baked in there because what I wanted to do was this is great because I don't get to talk about this as much about like nerding out about how this came about and my approach to it. So I'm not just a Gundam fan. I love like Macross, Neon Genesis Evangelion. Oh my gosh, I always forget the English name of it. It's called Reach for the Top in Japanese.
Gunbuster.
Gunbuster, yes. Love Gunbuster. So
nerd.
I know.
I'm the one that said Gunbuster.
I know, I forgot. I always call it Reach for the Top because I watched the Japanese version. That's what it was called.
Yeah, of course.
But anyway, I love all mech stuff, and so it's just so nerdy. I was thinking about how I didn't want to just all put them into mechs that just looked like superheroes, like put them all into generic mech suits. I was like, the DC universe was built on these characters who were in separate titles, sometimes at separate publishers, like getting melded together into one universe. So I was like, so then by that logic, every single one of them, because they did not grow up with each other, they were not part of the same force at the beginning of the story. Each one of them will have a mech based on a different show and a different origin as if they came from their own thing. So Superman's was like based on like Mazinga and like those big, like curvy, like super robots from that era. The Batman mech was heavily inspired by the Crossbone Gundam from Gundam Crossbone, which has like a pirate kind of theme. That's why it's got the big cloak and stuff. The Flash one was heavily influenced by Evangelion. That's why it's got the long limbs. Yeah.
Dude,
obviously
I remember on my overview, I said this, I don't know if it was on purpose, but this looks like a Go Nagai design. So when you mentioned the Superman, I'm like, awesome. That's what I thought it was.
Yeah, totally. And then the Green Lantern one obviously is Macross of Robotech, because I was like, there's no way Hal Jordan's not having a plane that transforms into a mech. Yeah. And then Wonder Woman's was heavily based actually on it was a weird pull because the first thing isn't mech related, but we wanted it to be like Clash of the Titans and the giant like moving statues, the Ray Harryhausen stuff, because it would be like Greek mythology stuff. And then G Gundam, because she has the bracers that do the motion tracking stuff. So we thought like that would be really cool to make it like almost some kind of magical ceramic thing, and then put in like, if she's gonna fight, she's gonna throw hands. Like she's not gonna be sitting there pulling levers and stuff. So that's why we wanted to give her those controls. And all of the Dark Side stuff and Apocalypse stuff was based on like War of the Worlds and weird like alien type technology, and more of the, if you're a deep Gundam fan, there's a like a bit in the lore in like Zeta Gundam and stuff about mechs that come from outside the soul or from the far reaches of the solar system. They're a little bit more alien looking, so we went with that for those. But Valimar Rivas and I, the artist, we had like Excel spreadsheets that had like what each mech had. So if he wanted to draw them doing certain things, like he knew what armaments they had, which came in handy for the like outstanding Dan Mora variant covers that he did, which were the blueprints for each one. Those were done because I had asked. Gundam does these technical manual things you can buy that like lay out all the blueprints and all the armaments and how they work. And I just asked if I could have that in the back of the trade. And my editor was like, screw that. You want those as covers? And I was like, absolutely, I do. and by Dan Mora, nonetheless. So I would have to, I actually wrote covers.
Dan is a big anime guy too. I'm sure
Yeah.
you know, right? So it's really cool to see this generation that was heavily influenced by, well, you're 90s kid, right? So like heavily influenced by like Toonami and things like that, getting the right comics because you see it, you see the homage. I mean, even Daniel Warren Johnson and things like that. It's just all over the place. And I love it as somebody that has been a big fan of anime when it was just Japanimation, and it was
yes, the good old Japanimation section at Blockbuster.
Oh my gosh, it was impossible to get, man. I will never forget like it was the first VHS in America that they had the Japanese dub, and that was Vampire Princess Miyu.
Oh yeah.
And Amigo is the one that brought it over. And I remember that clamshell tape was like $34.95. And I was like, oh my
cheap
God.
To get
that was like what, 1992, 1991, something like that. And I was in the 8th grade, maybe freshman year in high school, and I was saving my money for comics. So we rented that thing. And oh my gosh. Yeah, it's so much easier now. Like Crunchyroll and all that, man. It's just, I wouldn't know what to do with myself if I had access to all this stuff when I was younger. It was insane.
I used to have to get some of the Dragon Ball movies. Like my friends at school who had an internet connection would put them on video CDs because some of them weren't released yet. Yeah. So like I watched like Lord Slug on a VCD with like fan subs and stuff because it wasn't out yet.
Oh, was it the racist fan subs of Dragon Ball Z that were just all over the internet? Because I think that was the way I watched it. So when I watched like the legit Dragon Ball Z translations, I was like, I remember Frieza being a lot racist.
He said some stuff. Yeah, I won't repeat here.
Yeah, that's crazy. We have come a long way from those days, man. It's insane just how much of American pop culture has become for something that's anime, right? That started off in Japan. I mean, it's everywhere now, in movies and like I said, people that it grew up with and are now entertaining us, right, with writing and drawing. So I think it's wonderful. So this was nice to geek out about all the different robots because you know, when you do overviews, and just like it is when you're writing, it's like, man, I hope they get it. So when I'm doing an overview, I'm like, I got it, but I hope it comes across that I got it to someone else that may not be picking this up right now. And they're like, oh, whoa, that is right. That's definitely a Go Nagai inspired design robot.
So awesome. Yeah, my biggest worry after I did it was, did I lean too, because I tried to mix like the DC storytelling with anime manga storytelling, and you can never see the forest for the trees when you're in the middle of making something. So you always have like this panic moment, like, wait a minute, does this work? Like, did I mess up? Like, did it work? And you start overthinking things. But to hear that people have enjoyed it, it sounds like Baldemar and I got it, like, and we're able to weave it in, because I tried to make like a traditional Justice League story as well as that kind of like that mech team at odds story that's in so many like anime and manga, where like they're working together but they're forced to work together and they don't like completely gel until near the end. So like they're always kind of at odds at each other and see each other as rivals for a while and stuff. And I had a wild time like completely rethinking what the DC universe would be like if like it had been mech combat instead of superhero stuff. There was a lot of stuff we couldn't put in that got left out, that we planned for sequels and stuff that we would still do if we ever got a sequel greenlit. I'll tell you one, because it was one of my favorite, because it leans more into Power Rangers type stuff.
Okay.
Were we going to do another one, or possibly some shorts? We were going to introduce Captain Marvel Shazam, and he was going to have a watch that he would use to essentially like transfer his mind into a giant like red robot. and then Talkie Tawny, the tiger,
Tiger,
would do the same thing into a giant tiger robot that he
dude,
would fight alongside like the Thunder
dude,
Zords from the
was it
second
a
season of Power
merge?
Rangers. Yes. And then he would ride it and then also merge into like a combined like Thunder Tiger thing to fight something. So that was one of the concepts that we had for more
is
characters.
So ridiculously badass.
Thanks,
I love
man.
it. I love it, man. That's awesome. That's the kind of fun I like to see in comics, right? Like sometimes I think in comics we do take ourselves too seriously, and they're great. Don't get me wrong, I like that. But every once in a while, I like to see creators have fun and just go at it with these characters that have been around for well over, oh my gosh. I don't even want to say how long some of these characters have been around.
Yeah.
Golly, this is crazy. Have you ever thought about like pitching Power Rangers with the Boom Studios?
I think I did send a pitch in once, but I don't think it got picked up. But I don't think it would work now with the continuity they set up. So that's fine. Mine was like kind of a it could be. Mine was like a Metal Gear kind of take on the Phantom Ranger, if you know who that is, from like the Turbo and In Space era.
So while I didn't, I think most of my viewers know this. Like I didn't grow up watching it. I was in high school when that was coming out. But I wish I could turn my camera around or take it over there. I love giant robots. So
of course,
those robots, when they were coming out, the Megazords, they were the toy of that Christmas. It was impossible to find those robots, like the Dragon Zord. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm the same way when it comes to comics. I'm the same way when it comes to collecting. I'm just gonna get one and that's it. So I bought the Dragon Zord. I found the Dragon Zord at like a Toys R Us. And then I'm like, oh, but he merges with the other Megazord. Oh, I gotta get the other Megazord. Oh, and they can fit inside of this giant Brontosaurus. I gotta get that too. And then, man, it just started becoming a thing. I started importing the Japanese versions, and I'm just a sucker for giant robots. But I do know who the Phantom Ranger is. Yeah. Although his identity was never revealed in the show, right?
No, I think at one point the rumor is he was going to be revealed to be Billy, the original Blue Ranger. That was like a rumor for a while, and they're talking about that. But essentially, like my pitch was like a Metal Gear type thing of that, of like missions he would go on, like one man missions to like take down enemy installations and stuff. A lot of silent storytelling and everything. But I'll always do it if they want me to do it. I'll come. I'll pop in and do an issue or two. Happy to do it. But yeah, I'm also, for me, it was like all about getting the Zord toys. That's what I wanted. My parents couldn't find the original ones. So the first ones I got were the Thunder ones, which were the second ones, which are based on Die Ranger, I believe. And I love those ones, like the Red Dragon and everything that folds down into the guy with the staff and the White Tiger and everything. They're dope.
Man, some of the designs got silly, right? But I think for the most part, I was always a fan of the dinosaurs. So anytime they brought it back, with Dino Thunder and Dino Charge, I ended up getting those Zords. Like eventually, much like collected editions, you do run out of space. So I'm like, these are big. I need to slow down.
Yeah,
I don't even watch this stuff. So I have no emotional attachment to any of these characters.
They're just so dope. I just like the robots.
I mean, it's Voltron, right? Characters that combine, I'm in, man. And then of course Transformers did that with their Gestalts, and then even the GoBots did it with their own little things they would climb inside of and ride. And So Kenny, you man, we geeked out for a while there. You are still writing. What are you writing these days? Tell me what you're working on.
A lot of it hasn't been announced, so I can give you some ballpark of stuff. I know the one thing that was announced is I'm part of that like Mr. Justice Archie thing that they're doing at Archie Comics.
Okay.
So I wrote one of the stories for that. I don't think they've announced specifically which one I'm doing yet. So I've been seeing the artwork for that though, and that's awesome. I'm doing some more creator-owned stuff. I have a sci-fi series that's going to come out next year. Also hasn't been announced. So I'm sorry I'm not giving you anything cool right now for me to put out. But and then I'm doing a horror series with another publisher, another creator-owned one, dipping back into the creepy stuff, like in my roots, back to the Top Cow days. And then there's some more licensed stuff on the way. One of them is something that I've loved ever since I was a kid and feel super giddy about getting to contribute to. And then another one is something that I love more recently that I'm going to get to contribute to. And then I will be doing another DC thing too that hasn't been announced. That's going to be a while. It's going to take a bit to get done.
All right. So far I've got something you like, something horror, something for DC.
Yep.
Okay. And then another publisher.
Mm-hmm.
You are laying out the strong hints, Kenny. Other publisher, you say? There's only so many of them. Have you gotten to write? I don't think you've written anything for Marvel, have you?
No, I'd love to. I love those characters. Like I showed you, I got that omnibus the other day. Another one I've been reading through, which I've been having a ton of fun with. I got right here on the desk is the Charlie Houston Moon Knight.
Oh yeah,
I was reading through that. So I'm a big Moon Knight fan. But no, yeah, I love all the Marvel characters, especially the street level guys. It's weird because I really like the street level characters and then the cosmic ones. Like that big divergence. But yeah, I love Marvel. Like I know I wear like I got DC hat. I write a lot of DC characters, but I love the Marvel characters just as much. The only two characters whose books have like consistently made me shed a tear are Superman books and Spider-Man books. Because those two will always get me.
Now I gotta ask which one? Which one?
Which Superman? So Superman for all seasons usually will make me tear up a little bit. As well as All-Star Superman will do that to me every time I read it. And then Spider-Man wise, the funeral for Ultimate Peter Parker when Aunt May talks to the little girl he saved. Who has the half-burned face. That always makes me tear up when I'm reading it. And then the end of Spider-Man Blue, too, when he's talking to the tape recorder to Gwen. That always makes me tear up.
Dude, what gets me every time in that story is MJ saying, "Tell Gwen I said hi." Oh,
yeah,
that gets me
that moment, just like, I'm dead. Got me.
That was a beautiful story. Yeah, I am easily moved when it comes to comics. I mean, there are some that have just made me tear up. Those are some good mentions, though. All-Star's beautiful, and so is For All Seasons. I'm always curious what gets people. So what characters would you like to write? You said street level characters, so let's be a little more specific. If you had a chance to write Marvel comics, your choice. Robots or no robots, it's up to you.
Okay, well, maybe robots would get in there eventually. I always find a way to put a Meccano Man in there somehow.
My man.
Absolutely gigantic Daredevil fan. So getting to do a Daredevil story would be incredible. I'd love to do some Moon Knight stuff because I love that character, and I think there's just so much room to do crazy stuff. I don't know if you'd consider him street level, but he is on the street all the time. I love Ghost Rider and I love horror stuff. I'd love to do like a really deep horror take on Ghost Rider, like really lead into the horror aspect. And I don't know if you consider him, I guess this isn't street level, but I also love Captain America, especially like the Brubaker run. And I would love to do like, I just think like he's like Steve Rogers is such a great character. And there's so much you could say right now about like the way the world is and everything about like trying to unite people and trying to like remind people that we're all in this together. I'd really love to do a Captain America run, I think too. But those are some characters I'd love to play around with.
Got you. Okay. Yeah, man, those are some solid choices. Honestly, if you got to play around with them. Horror. You mentioned you were into horror. Those are your roots when it came to winning that Top Cow. And it's been a while since you've written anything horror related, right?
Yeah, I haven't really written anything spooky in a while, except for some of the Halloween shorts for DC.
Yeah, you did like that what was it? The Curse comics that they did in a very DC Halloween. I think it was what it was called.
Yeah, both were Green Lantern stories. So one of them was like a zombified kind of story with Guy Gardner, and then the other one was a team up between Hal Jordan and Etrigan the Demon with like a demonic science cell prisoner. So that was super fun. Writing Etrigan dialogue is fun, but you look
I
like an
do.
insane person while you're trying to count the iambic pentameter on your hands.
I was
Of
gonna
like,
say, I don't know. Oh my god, that character is so difficult to read sometimes, especially
yeah.
that what was it, the John Byrne stuff. But what did you what did you like when you were younger that inspired you to write horror?
I think it was really Alien was the first like horror centric thing that I really leaned into. Like I Omar, I would get in trouble all the time as a kid for talking about movies I would watch that I should not be
The should not
watching,
be watching.
like
I
at
was the same
school.
way.
They asked us to like draw what we did that weekend, and I drew the Predator when he like rips the guy's spine out in the first movie, and they like called my parents and they were like, something
So
is wrong
awesome.
with your kid. And like, no, it's from a movie. He knows it's fake. He's just excited. Like he just likes it. So I would say Alien was probably the first one that really kicked it off. I will say, even though I liked spooky things, I always loved monsters. Um, this is really funny, but I don't know if this ever happened to anybody as a little kid, but like you see enough stories as a little kid about like toys coming to life, books coming to life and stuff. At the video store, the Nintendo section at the like local video store, the non-blockbuster one, was through the horror movies. And I didn't like going because I was convinced all the characters on the if I didn't keep my eyes on the horror movie boxes as like a kindergartner, like they were gonna come to life and get me. So I would move very slowly either or very quickly through like keeping my eyes on all of them. So I've always like kind of loved spooky stuff. And then my buddy Dave Acosta, who's like another one of the like guys I talk to all the time, who you know from like he does like a lot of stuff with Elvira and stuff. He did an image book called Terror War recently. He's a
Yeah.
huge horror guy, and so I'll usually talk to he and my buddy Brian Level about horror movies and like get recommendations for them and stuff. For my buddy Ryan Lee or even Tyrell, like I'll I'll ask them like what's good. I want to get back into it because I kind of like took a break for a long time, and now I'm like back in deep. Like I watched last night, I revisited the not so great 1999 remake of House on Haunted Hill because I never saw it.
Oh, I forgot about that remake.
Well, so that was funny because that was kind of like a Volcano Dante's Peak situation where that came out the same year as the Haunting remake. So there were two different haunted house movies with similar titles.
So they did the
Um,
same thing with A Bug's Life and Ants. They both
yeah,
came out the same. I think
that's that weird situation. Deep Impact and Armageddon. Like they're always these two movies. They're like the A and B. But yeah, I've always loved spooky stuff, and I haven't gotten to write anything for a while. I will say at least this thing that I'm working on is a ghost story, which I love ghost stories because another one of my favorite things as a kid was Ghostbusters. Ride or Die, like the original Ghostbusters, is my favorite movie, and that was like a great introduction. Even though it wasn't for kids, it was like it was cathartic for kids because you got to see really funny people take on really scary stuff. So I think that also like fed into my love of horror. And I also love like horror video games, like huge Resident Evil guy and Silent Hill and stuff. So always love spooky stuff.
Man, that's that's awesome. What's your favorite horror movie, son?
Um, let's
Alien?
see. I'm not going to count it. I'll just because Alien's like the default starter one. That's a duh for me because like I'll watch that movie anytime it's on because I just love it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I really recently, I really love Return of the Living Dead. I don't know if you've ever seen that before. That's the horror comedy that's like sort of a
The, the
sequel.
the one from the 80s?
Yeah, the one
Yeah,
where they say brains and stuff, and they're like calling the cops so that the cops keep coming so they can eat them.
dude, that movie's so good. That's a good one.
I
Good
know.
choice.
It's so great. So I really like that one. I really liked Cuckoo is that new movie that came out recently. I liked that a lot. That had Hunter Schafer in it. That's I won't say anything about the plot or anything so people can go check it out. That was a recent one that was really good. Um, God, there's so many. I can't think of all of them. I'm trying to think about what I watched recently this past year. I just Don't Look Now is a really good like horror thriller from the 70s with Donald Sutherland. Like I'll check out anything. Watched Carnival of Souls for the first time, so any era, any decade, the old Universal monster movies are fun. Like I'll check out whatever.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. I horror for me has a special place in my heart. I was very much like you, like things I should
awesome.
not have. I should
Yeah.
not have been watching things
Yeah.
like, and I still did. Like, I think like The Exorcist, like The Omen, and things like that. Things I should not have been watching as a kid, and they forever are embedded in my brain just because, you know, there's a lot of imagery in that stuff that will, to a kid, you're like, how is that real? Did that guy's head really get chopped off?
I was just
how,
with the glass, the pane of
yeah,
glass. Is
man,
that what you're
like,
thinking of? That's exactly what I thought of when you said The Omen, was when he gets
like
decapitated by the pane of glass.
that stayed with. I couldn't go to sleep, and it was my own fault. I was sleeping in between my mom and dad, and they were watching it, and I was supposed to be already asleep. But you're a kid, right? I was 4 years old. I was like, "What's happening? Oh, okay." The devil's possessed. This is the devil's kid. What is this? And you know, you get enthralled and like it wrapped in the story. And then it was the photographer who gets his head chopped off, and I was like, man, I was so scared to go to bed.
Like glass can do that? That can happen? Like a window can do that?
I was like, I'm never taking a picture of myself ever. This is awful. Man. But a lot of good memories. A lot of good memories of horror movies. And now my oldest daughter, she's 15 now. She loves horror movies, so that's something we bond over.
Oh,
like,
cool.
We've gone through a lot of the classics, and like her, actually one of her favorites is Alien. Like she loves Alien. And I had to get her like the way I like slowly dipped her toes into the world of horror was showing her like some kind of like lighthearted horror. Like I think the Mummy. The Mummy's a good one because it's got a little bit of horror elements, little jump scares, but it's funny, and the characters are so. The characters are, you're just, you know, you gravitate to one of those characters. And then Gremlins, and I think Monster Squad. Monster Squad is one of my all-time favorites. I love
God, such a classic.
And then we moved on. Like, I was like, well, if you want to see more scary stuff, we moved on to Alien, and she loves Aliens. I think we watch Aliens like once every year. It's just such a great series, man.
Did you guys get to go to the new one together?
We did. We saw it. And somebody just asked. Awesome. Alan's actually asking if we saw Alien Romulus, and I really liked it. I love the fact that they started using practical effects in the movie.
Oh yeah, the puppetry and stuff looked awesome. Oh. Yeah.
So you saw it?
I saw it too. Yeah, I had a really good time with it. Like I said, I've been an Alien fan like since forever. I'd go buy the comics and everything. I had the whole like toy line. Like I would buy the because you know back when we were kids, you could make an R-rated movie and then make a toy line out of it.
Absolutely,
and it would sell like hotcakes. Yeah,
RoboCop.
Yes, exactly. You know, kids movies.
It's so weird.
I had a ton of Terminator toys too, but yeah, I had like the gorilla alien that like you could fill its mouth with water and squeeze it and it would shoot water and stuff. And I had like every different variant they had of like the scorpion alien, the like jaguar and everything. And my brother would get all the Space Marines, so we'd use our money and allowance and stuff to buy all the different versions. So absolutely loved that toy line too. But yeah, I loved the new movie. It was really fun.
And that's what I want more of. And did you watch Prey? Because you also
I love Prey. Dude, I'd say I like Prey a little bit more, but I just loved it.
That's what I want to see. I want to see more Predator in different timelines. I want to see like a feudal Japan Predator movie. Oh my gosh, that would be so cool. I mean, it really opened up the door of like, hey, let's not have these ridiculous like. Both Predator and Aliens kind of got silly for a while.
Yeah.
And I actually like some of the stuff. I actually like aspects of Alien 3. I like aspects of Alien
Resurrection.
But Alien versus Predator, the movies that I was like wanting to see as a kid, I think they did too, right?
They did too. I never saw the second one because I wasn't a fan of the first one.
They're that forgettable that I did not like them, that I couldn't even remember that they did too. Oh, it was awful. It was awful, man. Like, and how do you mess up Aliens versus Predator?
It's pretty tough. You gotta put in like a good 16 hours of work a day to mess it up.
What it writes itself, I thought, man. And I don't know. It's good. It's good. I have a soft spot in my heart for Predator 2. Predator 1 is
I do have a soft spot for Predator 2 as well. But Prey is like
Prey's up there. Prey is
up there. I love it. I wish they had. I know it was because it was in the like weird streaming and COVID kind of era at the tail end of it. They had the squirting alien too. That's
Squirting alien.
awesome. Um, I really wish they would have like given it just a tiny little bit more money and put it in theaters because I feel like people would
I
have
know
really
it would have been.
resonated with it because a lot of people didn't even know about it.
No, it just dropped on Hulu one day. It
Yeah,
wasn't.
and I am. Yeah,
Yep. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I'm really excited for the Alien TV show too because I love Noah Hawley and like Fargo and stuff. And he's running that new Alien TV show that's gonna come out soon.
I'm
So
excited for
I'm
that.
really
Yeah.
pumped about that.
I think if they start going the route of Alien Romulus and Prey, I think we're in good hands for as far as that franchise. Now we need a good like Terminator revamp. Although I heard dang it, I can't believe I haven't seen it yet. The anime is pretty solid.
Yeah, I've seen it advertised. I haven't watched it yet.
Okay.
It's
Netflix?
next on my list. Yeah, it's on Netflix. Because the one I'm watching right now, I needed something lighthearted because I've been watching so much horror stuff that I'm watching. You might have the manga or maybe you watch it. Have you heard of Delicious in Dungeon?
My friend Tina adores that series, and I'm picking up the box set in December. So the box set is coming out in December. But my brother's been watching the series too. He likes
It's really fun and funny, and it does have some violent and like horrific moments, but it's a really fun just story about like D&D type characters who have to eat the monsters in the dungeon because they don't have any money for food, and how they cook and prepare them.
I do I do miss watching so much anime. Like my brother's like, "Oh, you haven't been watching this?" I'm like, "Dude, I have to read." Like the stack of books that I have to read is insane. I can't.
Hey, dude, I think I read a lot. I think you probably read more than most people on the planet.
But you have to take a break from reading to write, though.
I do,
just
yeah.
like I do to like make a video and edit. But still, it's just like there's not enough time. And I know I'm complaining about something great that I do, but still, I wish I had time to play the video games. And it's funny because he's like, to me, he's my like out of the three brothers, like he's the most successful one out of all of us. He's well into the six-figure category of making money. But the funny thing is he works from home and he's like, yeah, man, like, you know, I probably like he calls it a rough week when he's like, I put in about, 20 hours this week. And the rest of the time he's just playing video games. I was like, I hate you so much. I hate you so much. And he's like, yeah, well,
it's like, why aren't you up to date on every single anime? He's
dude,
like, I watched everything.
Like, what was it? Final Fantasy VII Rebirth dropped. By the time my wife went to pick up her copy, my brother had already played like 42. Like, he didn't sleep for like 3 days. I think he played 42 hours or something. He's like, oh man, it's great. How far are you guys? We just picked up the copy that came out.
We're tearing the seal right now. That's how far I am.
But I love it. I love that people are like that too, that have the time to do it. So you got future projects coming up. I love hearing that. And Kenny, I loved having you on the show, man. You are always welcome back. Anytime you want to come back and promote any of those books, please let me know. And I will make sure to accommodate and have you on here, man. It's been a blast. We didn't even talk about your favorite stuff. We talked about your horror movies and how you got started, but I'm curious, like, what kind of books you really got into when you were younger. So are there any, I was looking at the future collected editions of any of your books that are coming out. I know Superboy, the Man of Tomorrow has been released.
Yep, that's on trade paperback right now. So if you haven't picked that up or heard about it yet, anyone who's watching, that was a series I did with Janoy Lindsay, who's going to be doing the new Absolute Green Lantern book. And so super stoked for him because he's crazy talented. That's going to look amazing. But Superboy, Man of Tomorrow was our story about Connor Kent. Like after they had brought him back into continuity in the universe, it was about him striking out into space and like trying to make a name for himself as like a different type of super person, and him getting neck deep in trouble like he usually does. And it's got all the heart of like the animated stuff. And then I pitched it to Janoy as like a Dragon Ball type take of him like going off into space and fighting aliens and stuff that are stronger than him and having to learn to use his powers in different ways and teaming up with different people. So if you like Superman and DC Comics and you like Dragon Ball, like that's a great sort of thing to pick up.
So that one's available in trade, and we talked a little bit about, well, we kind of geeked out. If you're interested at all, DC Mech is also available in trade paperback. That was the story where all the superheroes in this alternate reality got to ride into mechs. Now, the Schlub, is that one out in trade?
Yes, that's out in
Okay.
trade now. So people can pick up the whole 6-issue series. Yeah, you can get that at any bookstore, any comic book shop. You can go and grab that. And then there's also the adaptation of The Flash I did
Oh yeah.
with a bunch of like multiple artists.
Mhm.
That's available everywhere. Flash, Fastest Man Alive. I think you can get that in a box set still that has Flashpoint and then the Batman '89 comic in it as well,
Oh,
which
that's
is
awesome.
awesome. Yeah, which is
Yeah,
like a
man.
cool collection.
And then he's got future projects he's working on that he can't say anything about. Hopefully, be something that he's excited to write, which I'm sure he's excited to write all these, but something that means something to him personally. I would like to see
They
that.
are very personal stories.
Oh,
So
awesome.
the creator owned stuff are all based on like very personal, deep rooted. Like if you're looking for me to like take a sponge of like some trauma and wring it out, like that's what you're gonna get with some of them. Though the sci-fi one is a hopeful story, so it's not a sad sack story. And if you, I will definitely send you copies of those to check out, Omar, and stuff. And we can jump on and talk about them.
Absolutely, man. And like I mentioned, you are always welcome back, Kenny. This has
Thanks,
been a
man.
blast. And thank you everybody for joining us, and thank you for all the kind words about that Superboy book. It also had nice art. Barbarian, dude, is that true? Dude, that's my favorite character in Dragon Ball Z, and I enjoyed Barbarian. That was one of
Oh
my
yeah,
favorite.
Barbarian's a great movie. I absolutely loved it. I love it more now when I realize that the director is from The Whitest Kid You Know. And when you
What?
like when you reverse extrapolate it, it does feel like a scary Whitest Kid You Know sketch. Um
One of my
uh
favorite moments in that movie is damn it, it's a spoiler though. It was something I didn't I'll just say this. It wasn't something I was expecting on top of the water tower that happens.
oh yeah.
Like, well, you gotta do what it takes to survive, man. What is the worst horror movie you watched? I've seen a lot of bad movies.
I don't know if it's quality wise the worst I watched, but one that I watched real recently that I really didn't like was an Italian horror film called Burial Ground, which is like a zombie movie.
Okay.
Uh, that's mainly because okay, so Italian horror, they love eye violence.
Oh
They
yeah.
love doing
Yeah.
stuff to people's eyes. That has always irked me out because I don't like stuff touching my eyes. That's why I don't wear contacts. So like there's a very famous scene in I think it's called Zombie 2 where like they slowly push a woman's head and eye through a splinter in a door. This had a lot of that. And also had a different type of violence that I didn't know I hated until I saw it in Burial Ground, which this is an R-rated show, right?
Yeah, go ahead. What
Not
do
that
they do?
bad. Nipple violence, which I was not ready for.
You weren't ready.
Unlocked a whole new level of scared for me. But it was also just a really dumb, weird movie. And it's got some other stuff in it that irked me that I don't want to talk about on here that I'll gladly talk about with you offline. But it made the whole movie made me uncomfortable. And it is really funny that like a lot of Italian horror movies just end with well, they're about vibes. It's not about the story. Like they're making a haunted house, like, and they're just filming it. Like the plot doesn't really matter. What happens to the characters don't really matter in an Italian horror movie. But a lot of them will usually just end with kind of like everybody dying and then an impactful quote from a literary person at the end. Like it'll just be
Like it
super
means
like
something.
superimposed. Yeah,
Yeah.
just like oh, what toils we do in the lands of war. And you're like, okay, but this was a zombie movie. Like I don't I don't get why we're saying that. So Burial Ground would probably be the worst I've seen in a while. But I do love schlocky dumb movies. Like I love Slumber Party Massacre and
Oh,
stuff.
dude, I love those. You like Troll 2. Like, I'm sure people think
We just
Troll
watched
2 is.
that recently. Yeah,
Wait, you've seen it before, though, right?
I had, but we watched it recently because we bought live tickets to a How Did This Get Made virtual event where they talked about the movie. So we watched it again so that I could
Have
see
you
it kind of
seen
fresh.
Best Worst Movie, the documentary?
Yeah, that's great.
That documentary, like, is one of my favorite documentaries. When Oh my god! If you all haven't, I think Amanda and I reviewed Troll 2 a couple of years ago. But in the documentary, you almost have to watch it back to back. When the old guy shows up and he's like, "Yeah, man, I had gotten out of an insane asylum, and I thought this whole thing was real. Like, I didn't know we were acting." I lost it, man. I'm like, "Oh my god, where did they find these people?" Like, it's such a brilliant movie. I
You
don't.
can't piss on hospitality, Omar.
Oh
I
man,
won't allow it.
there's so many good lines in that movie. I don't know. Like, I think of like okay, so U-Bowl is almost hard to put up there because U-Bowl is trying to make a bad movie, right? Looks like
Yeah.
ridiculous things like House of the Dead almost, yeah, whatever. So I'm thinking of like movies that they actually tried to make a good movie and it was just bad. Dude, like maybe Jaws the Revenge is up there. That's a bad one.
That's
Or
pretty good.
Fear.com. Oh, I hated that movie. I'm thinking of movies that my brother
Oh,
dragged
man,
me
I
to go
forgot
see.
about fear.com.
Remember Alone in the Dark, like based on the video game? The video game was solid, but the movie was just awful. It had Christian, I think it had Christian Slater in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Fog remake wasn't good. Like, there's just a lot of movies like they actually tried to give you a good movie, but it was just
Fell
awful.
flat. Yeah.
It was awful, man. So those are the kind of movies that kind of piss me off. Like, oh, somebody actually tried to make this good and it just didn't work.
Yeah. Whereas opposed to, like I said, something like Slumber Party Massacre, I'm all for the super campy, cheesy, just lean into it. Best part of any movie is when she's so hungry during all the massacring that's going on that she eats the pizza off the dead delivery boy because she's like, well, I gotta eat, and they're like judging her.
Dude, have you seen Bro Party Massacre? It was the guys that used to do the 5-second films on
No, I never saw Bro Party Massacre.
Is it called Bro Party Massacre? Dude, I loved it. I laughed my ass off. It was such a funny, like, it was like a Kickstarter, and then they actually put it, I think it's up for rental on Bro Dude Party Massacre, I think is what it's called. I thought it was hilarious. It's not a horror movie, but it's a big spoof of those kind of movies.
Oh, awesome.
Well, thank you so much for joining me, man. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Smash that like button and go and check out Kenny's work. You'll be seeing a lot more of him. And just out of curiosity, Kenny, if anybody's around, you doing any cons? Are you showing up at any cons later this year or early next year?
The only one I have later this year is there's one here in Grand Rapids in Michigan. There's a Grand Rapids Comic-Con. I'll be tabling there, and then I'll be at Emerald City next year and C2E2 for sure. And then I don't know the rest of my schedule yet. So I will be at those shows, and I'll be tabling at all of them. So come and buy some books, bring anything, I'll sign it. Love to meet anybody, or if you guys just want to talk about movies and crazy comic stuff, always happy to do it.
That's it, Dude Bro Party Massacre 3. Thank you for that, James. Everybody have a wonderful, wonderful evening.